Have you ever woken up with a mind already heavy, burdened by thoughts you never chose yet cannot silence, the quiet fear of what might go wrong, the anger that burns before you can stop it, the sadness that lingers without name? These emotions seem like storms, but what if they are signals? What if the problem is not their presence, but how we meet them? Stoic philosophy offers more than comfort. It offers clarity. What follows is not theory, but practice. Stay with me. Every word may bring you closer to peace than you've ever known. Number 1, recognize that your mind can create joy. The greatest tragedy is not that life is hard, but that we allow our minds to make it harder. The human mind is a magnificent instrument, capable of producing joy as vividly as it can produce pain. And yet, many of us walk through life as if we are victims of thought, unaware that we are the ones pressing the keys that compose the melody of our emotions. We are like pianists who sit before a grand instrument, but continue to play only the notes of sorrow, fear, and regret, never realizing we have the power to create harmony instead. Your mind is not your enemy. It is simply untrained, and when left on autopilot, it tends to dwell on unfinished tasks, imagined failures, old wounds, or future uncertainties. It fixates on the unknown and fabricates suffering from silence. But the Stoics taught that the mind, once brought under conscious direction, can become the fountain of peace. Joy does not depend on what happens around you. It depends on how you choose to interpret what happens. The difference between a mind that torments and a mind that liberates is not what it faces, but how it responds. Picture this. You wake up in the morning, and your first thoughts are of deadlines, arguments, or worries. Instantly, your chest tightens. The weight of the day settles in before your feet touch the floor. But what if you paused? What if you chose instead to recognize that waking up itself is a privilege, that the morning is not a threat, but a chance to reset? When you shift your attention to something simple, a warm shower, the sunlight through your window, the quiet, it is not the world that has changed, it is your perception. And perception, as the Stoics remind us, is everything. Seneca once wrote that true happiness is found in enjoying the present without anxious dependence on the future. This is not a poetic escape, it is a practical reminder. You are not your regrets. You are not your fears. You are the one watching them, and the more you practice choosing your focus, the more naturally joy arises, not because the world has become perfect, but because your mind has stopped distorting it. Think back to a day spent with loved ones. Maybe the laughter was there, the warmth was there, but your mind was elsewhere. It was tangled in unfinished work or imagined scenarios. You were physically present, but emotionally absent. That moment, meant for joy, became another missed opportunity. Now imagine if you had paused, even briefly, to breathe in the sound of their voices, to notice the beauty of that instant. You would have realized that joy was never missing. You just weren't looking. Here is a simple Stoic practice. When negativity begins to creep in, stop and ask yourself, am I choosing the wrong thought? Am I pressing the wrong key on the instrument of my mind? Then deliberately choose a better one. Recall something you are grateful for. Remember a moment of peace. Bring to mind someone you love. You cannot stop thoughts from arising, but you can choose which ones to feed. Marcus Aurelius wrote that very little is needed for a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. That is not just a philosophy, it is a way of living. A Stoic does not wait for peace to arrive from the outside. He cultivates it from within. So today, choose to compose joy with your thoughts. Choose to become the master of your mind, because when you do, fear, anger, and anxiety begin to lose their grip, and in their place, calm, clarity, and quiet strength begin to rise. Number 2, learn to master your mind. To understand the mind is to recognize its immense power. It holds the key to both peace and chaos, to both liberation and suffering. The Stoics knew this well. They taught that what disturbs us is not what happens, but our judgment of it. And so, mastering the mind becomes not just a practice, but a responsibility. It is the difference between being carried by every wave of emotion and learning to stand firm in the middle of a storm. The first realization is simple yet profound. Your mind is not your enemy. It is not something to suppress or fight. It is a force to understand, train, and guide. Think of the last time you were consumed by anger. You might have said something you regretted or acted out in a way that felt powerful in the moment, but left a bitter residue afterward. The Stoic philosopher Seneca warned us that anger, if not restrained, often causes more harm than the original offense. You must ask yourself, is a moment of emotional release worth trading your inner peace? The answer lies in awareness. Emotions are not invaders. They are signals, reflections of what is happening within. When left unmanaged, they grow wild, like an untrained horse that bolts in every direction. But when observed with clarity and guided with discipline, they can be tamed and redirected. Imagine your mind as that wild horse. If you never hold the reins, it will drag you wherever it pleases. But once you learn to pause, to breathe, to reflect before you react, you begin to take control. The moment you feel anger rising, you can stop and ask, why am I angry? Is this truly worth my energy? What am I afraid of losing? These questions do not weaken you. They reveal clarity. They remind you that you always have a choice. Marcus Aurelius said that if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And that estimate, that perception, can be changed at any time. Take a moment to reflect on daily life. You are driving through traffic and someone cuts you off. You can scream, curse, let it ruin your day, or you can breathe, stay calm, and move on. The road does not care about your anger, but your nervous system does. This is the essence of Stoic mastery, not suppression, but selection. You do not have to feel nothing. You simply choose what you respond to and how. Mastering your mind is not a one-time act. It is a habit, like training your body. It requires patience and repetition. Start small. When you feel overwhelmed, return to your breath. When you feel afraid, remind yourself that this too will pass. When doubt creeps in, remember that clarity lives in stillness. Control is not about rigid discipline, it is about trust. Trusting that your calm response has more power than your rage, and your inner clarity holds more influence than outer chaos. To master your mind is to stop living at the mercy of everything outside of you. It is to become steady, anchored, and alive. And in that mastery, you do not just conquer fear or silence anger. You awaken something greater, a deeper self that can walk through anything with dignity. So the question is no longer, can you master your mind? But will you choose to? Because in that choice lies your freedom. Number 3, stop letting imagination run wild. Fear often arrives not because something terrible is happening, but because the mind has wandered far from reality. It runs ahead, writing scenes that have not yet unfolded, drawing conclusions from shadows, and building disasters from silence. Most of our anxiety, our dread, our anger, do not stem from real experiences, but from imagined ones. The Stoic Epictetus understood this clearly when he said, "Men are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them." And often, the view we take is one projected by an uncontrolled imagination. Think back to a time you felt anxious. Maybe it was a short message from your boss or partner that read, "We need to talk." Immediately, your mind crafted a story. Perhaps you imagined being in trouble, disappointing someone, or losing something precious. You rehearsed conversations that had not yet taken place. Your heart raced. Your body responded to danger that did not exist. And then the moment came. The meeting was calm, the conversation was neutral or even joyful. All that suffering you endured was born not from reality, but from your imagination. This is what the Stoics warned us against. When imagination is left undisciplined, it becomes a master of illusion. A brilliant director of internal horror films, replayed endlessly in the theater of your mind. You feel the fear, you feel the tension, but there is no audience, no antagonist, no crisis. It is all self-generated. And yet, it affects you as if it were real. That is the cost of letting imagination run wild. But the same imagination that builds anxiety can also build peace. It is not the tool itself that causes suffering. It is how we use it. Imagine, instead, directing your mind like an artist. What if you chose to create stories of resilience, hope, and humor? What if instead of catastrophizing a delay in response from a loved one, you imagined they were simply resting or thinking of something kind to say? Just as you have the power to imagine failure, you have the power to imagine victory. As easily as you visualize rejection, you can visualize acceptance. The mind is obedient when guided. It only wreaks havoc when abandoned. Consider a man receiving a late-night text from his partner that says, "We need to talk." His imagination spirals. He envisions betrayal, loss, heartbreak. But when the talk happens, she only wanted to share a beautiful dream she had about their future. The pain he endured came not from the conversation, but from the fantasy his mind created in the hours before. This is the danger of an untamed mind. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," and he was right. Life will always bring challenges, that is certain. But we make those challenges heavier when we add imagined burdens. The Stoic practice is not to suppress imagination, but to govern it. To notice when the mind is inventing monsters and gently say, "I will not feed this thought. I choose a better one." So the next time fear or anger arises, pause and ask, is this real or imagined? And if it is imagined, thank your mind for its creativity, then redirect it. Let your inner world become a sanctuary, not a battleground. Because in a world already filled with enough real difficulty, your mind should be the kindest place you know. If this reflection has brought you clarity, consider subscribing so you never miss the next lesson in reclaiming your peace. Now, let us move forward. Number 4, reframe how you label emotions. One of the greatest freedoms you will ever experience is realizing that your emotions are not fixed definitions. They are not facts. They are interpretations. What you feel is shaped not by the world, but by how you name what you experience. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that our suffering is not caused by external events, but by the meaning we assign to them. And that meaning begins with a single habit, the way we label our emotions. Imagine waking up on a rainy morning, already burdened by deadlines and a restless night. The sky is grey, your energy is low, and everything feels like an uphill climb. Frustration creeps in. You label the day as difficult. But pause. Is the rain truly a curse? Or is it just water falling from the sky? Something entirely neutral. Could that same rain be seen as calming, an invitation to slow down, a backdrop for stillness and reflection? The rain has not changed. Only your interpretation has. That shift is where power begins. Emotions are not the enemy, they are responses. They arise from thoughts, and thoughts are nothing more than mental currents flowing through your awareness. If left unexamined, those currents can sweep you into unconscious reaction, But when observed with clarity, they become messages rather than masters. When anxiety rises before a presentation, it is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign that you care. It means you are invested, that you want to do well. And once you recognize that, the emotion shifts. It energizes your preparation rather than derailing your confidence. The same feeling that once crippled you now becomes fuel. There is no absolute line between negative and positive emotions. There are only conscious and unconscious ones. The unconscious mind reacts out of habit, out of fear, out of inherited patterns. It labels discomfort as danger, unfamiliarity as failure, and intensity as chaos. But the conscious mind pauses. It names things with wisdom. It looks at fear and says, "You are here because I am growing." It looks at anger and asks, "What boundary was crossed? And how can I respond with strength and clarity?" This is the Stoic path. Not avoidance, not repression, but transformation through understanding. The more you resist an emotion, the more power it gains. Try not to think of a monkey for 10 seconds, and the image will flood your mind. The same principle applies to emotional resistance. Fighting fear makes it louder. Resisting sadness deepens it, but acceptance disarms it. Redefining it neutralizes its sting. When you say, "This is not fear, it is a signal I am on the edge of growth," the fear begins to lose its grip. When you say, "This is not anger, it is a call for justice or order," the anger becomes a compass instead of a storm. Emotions are reminders that you are alive, engaged, and evolving. They are not flaws to be erased, but signals to be honored. Reframing them does not numb you, it awakens you, it gives you back control. You do not need to fear your own feelings. You need only to understand what they are trying to tell you. In doing so, you reclaim your mind as a place of peace rather than turmoil. So, if you have come this far, know that you are not just learning to manage emotions, you are learning to reshape your entire relationship with life. The world may remain unpredictable, but your response will not. And in that steady response lies your freedom. Keep walking this path with awareness. The next lesson awaits you, and with it, even greater strength. Number 5. Understand how the mind works. To overcome fear, anxiety, and anger, you must first understand the engine behind it all, the mind. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us that the human mind is the one thing we have complete control over, and yet it remains the least understood by most. Without learning how your mind functions, you are not leading it, you are being led. You become a passenger in your own life, reacting to every storm instead of steering through it with intention and calm. Think of the mind as a garden. Leave it unattended, and it quickly overgrows with weeds, doubt, resentment, self-criticism. But if you tend to it each day, planting thoughts rooted in clarity, in purpose, in peace, that garden will bloom. The mind does not operate like a pair of scissors, easily snipping away what you no longer want. You cannot simply cut out fear or erase anxiety. In fact, the more you try to push a thought away, the louder it becomes. Try not to think of a pink elephant and see what happens. Resistance breeds fixation. What you try to silence only begins to shout. Epictetus taught that men are disturbed not by things, but by their judgments of things. You must learn to pause and examine those judgments. What does this emotion want to teach me? What is it trying to protect? When viewed through the lens of wisdom, fear becomes a signal to prepare more thoroughly. Anxiety becomes a whisper to focus on what matters most. Even anger, when not explosive, can illuminate a boundary that needs defending. Every negative emotion has something to say, not to hurt you, but to grow you, but only if you are willing to listen. Picture your mind as a car, beautiful, powerful, but without a driver. It crashes into the first wall it finds. The mind is the same, if left unsupervised. It speeds into scenarios that haven't happened, creates enemies that do not exist, and writes endings that are not true. The solution is not to stop the car, but to take the wheel, redirect the momentum, choose your path. In those moments before a big meeting or difficult conversation, your mind may start playing worst-case scenarios. But what if you changed the script? What if instead of asking, what could go wrong, you asked what you could learn, what you could contribute? You would feel the anxiety lose its grip. Not because the situation changed, but because you did. The mind amplifies what you give attention to. If you focus on shame, it multiplies. If you focus on growth, that too expands. Make a mistake and say to yourself, I always mess things up, and the mind will replay that loop until you believe it. But say instead, this is just one step in my learning. And the mind begins to rebuild your confidence. It is not magic. It is simply understanding how focus shapes experience. The Stoic path is not about suppression, but observation. When you feel overwhelmed, breathe. Ask where the feeling is coming from. Ask if it is even real. Most of the time, it is not. It is a distortion, not a truth. When you create space between yourself and your thoughts, you begin to see that your mind is not you. It is your tool, and like any tool, it can build or it can destroy. It all depends on how you use it. So ask yourself now, which thoughts will you choose to water? Which beliefs will you strengthen? The mind, once understood, becomes your greatest ally. But the choice, as always, begins with you. Number 6. Detach yourself from your thoughts. To overcome fear, anger, and anxiety, you must first understand that your thoughts are not facts. They are not orders, and they are not you. They are simply the whispers of a restless mind. The Stoics knew this well. They taught that peace begins the moment you stop identifying with every thought that passes through your consciousness. When you understand how the mind operates, you realize that negative thoughts are not a sign of weakness or failure. They are simply byproducts of an untamed mind, rising and falling like waves on the surface of the sea. And if you do not stand apart from them, you will be swept away. Imagine yourself in a meeting. A thought flashes in your mind. What if I say the wrong thing? What if they laugh? What if they judge me? Before anything happens, you are already drowning in anxiety. But ask yourself, is it the meeting that causes your stress or the story you've created around it? That thought was not reality. It was only a narrative, and narratives can be rewritten. Detaching from your thoughts is like stepping back from a painting. Up close, you see chaos and brush strokes, but with distance, a clear picture emerges. The same is true for the mind. The more space you create between yourself and your thoughts, the more power you reclaim. One powerful method is labeling. When anxiety appears, don't fight it. Simply say, this is anxiety. It is here, but it is not me. When anger rises, say, this is anger. It is a visitor, not a ruler. That small pause is everything. It transforms reactivity into reflection. The Stoics practiced this kind of distance relentlessly, not to escape life, but to see it with clarity. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that you always have the power to choose your response. Epictetus said it plainly, it is not things that disturb us, but our judgment about them. So when the storm comes, pause, breathe, ask yourself, will this matter in 5 days? Will this shape who I become, or simply pass like wind through the trees? Your thoughts are not the enemy, but they are not your master either. You are not your anxiety. You are not your fear. You are the observer, the calm presence behind it all. Let your mind speak, but do not obey blindly. When you learn to stand apart, you learn to stand free. And in that stillness, In that discipline of distance, you become untouchable. If you feel this truth, write in the comments, "I am not my emotions." Then stay with me. The final lesson is where it all comes together. Number 7. Continuously train your mind to combat negativity. Once you have learned to step back from your thoughts, the next task is to turn that awareness into discipline. This is the essence of Stoic mastery. Never stop training your mind. Just like a muscle, it needs daily work, not in grand gestures, but in small, consistent acts of inner clarity. The mind, left untended, falls prey to old patterns. Fear returns, anger flares, anxiety takes root. These emotions are not flaws, they are part of being human. But what defines your strength is how you respond. Many people chase the illusion of complete emotional escape. They believe one book, one quote, one insight will silence the noise forever. But the mind does not work that way. Trying to suppress emotion is like holding a ball underwater. The harder you push it down, the more forcefully it rises. Stoicism offers no shortcuts. Instead, it offers training, deliberate, daily training. Ask yourself each day, will this matter 5 years from now? This question alone can reshape how you see anxiety. Picture an employee preparing for a high-stakes presentation. Nerves rise, doubt whispers. But instead of resisting the fear, he prepares for the worst and accepts it. This simple shift transforms fear into focus. That is the power of premeditatio malorum. And at the end of the day, take just 5 minutes. Write down what disturbed you, how you reacted, and how you could respond better next time. This is not journaling for comfort. It is journaling for transformation. With each entry, you become more grounded, not perfect, but progressing. Stoicism does not promise a life without storms. It promises a mind trained to walk through them with calm, purpose, and dignity. You've just uncovered 7 timeless ways to quiet the mind and rise above fear, anger, and anxiety. Each one is a doorway to peace, but the key is daily practice. This journey is yours, step by step. If this message spoke to you, take a moment to subscribe so we can keep growing together. Type "stillness within" in the comments to affirm your path. And remember, the next video will take you even deeper. Your strength begins not in fighting your mind, but in learning to guide it.